Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So today we are going to get back to our GIMP tutorials. And if it feels like this is going a little slow, the reason is that there's a whole lot in GIMP, and although we might want me to jump in really fast and do all this sort of advanced stuff, you gotta learn to walk before you can learn to run. And GIMP is a complicated program, and so we're gonna take some time to do these various tutorials. And the target is one per week. I may not be able to do one full one per week, but that's kind of the target. And let me know the types of things you'd like to see below. But today we're gonna look at simple image manipulation. So this is just, you've gone out, you've taken a bunch of photos, you need to maybe get some ready for the web, to upload to a family blog, maybe you want to get some ready to print out, you want to crop some things around. We're going to be looking at those types of things today in the GIMP tutorial. So the things we're going to cover is we're going to cover first considerations for web versus print documents. We're going to look at scaling, cropping, canvas size, color, and I wrote here export to different file types, but I thought we did that last time. So just in case, we're going to go ahead and do that again. So what we're going to do here is, I've also pulled out a couple different images. I've pulled out a regular image like you snapped with a camera, and then I loaded up a GIF as well because I need to show you what the differences are between those. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and boot up GIMP, and then we're going to move on over to that screen. All right, so here we are, and we are essentially the same workspace I had. I added this palette group up here, and the reason is we are going to look at our image modes today, and one of those image modes will require us to have a look at the palette. And so what we want to do is, suppose first, first let's talk about web versus print. So in web versus print, if you are going to be producing some type of document, and GIMP is a reasonable place to make a document. There's other places, like I use Scribus to do my PDF print type documents, but you can do them in GIMP as well. Depending on what it is, you might do it in Inkscape because it's a vector program. GIMP is a raster program. But regardless, when you are doing an image for web versus print, you want to come down here and look at your resolutions, okay? Now, generally keeping your resolutions tied is the best thing to do. There are some advanced cases where you might not do that. So what the resolution is how many dots per inch. DPI is what resolution is in. Or in here, pixels per inch, basically dots, okay? So what you want to do is DPI, or pixels per inch, is what your standard is. Now, there's two basic standards. If you are printing a document, you are creating an image that is going to print through some type of printer, an advanced printer, or maybe even just your home printer, you want this resolution to be 300. Okay. Now you'll notice that if this guy here is linked, then if you change one of them, it will automatically change the other. We can also unlink it just by clicking on it, and this will tie it out. Okay, but 300 means, now this is pretty big. So this is where the size of an image in pixels and inches and whatever else kind of starts to break down. So if I tell you, if I tell one of my clients, for example, in web design, I need a banner image that's 1600 pixels wide. Well, if they give me a banner image 1600 pixels wide that is 300 DPI, the thing is going to be too large to appropriately load. Okay, so I would have to specify, make sure the resolution is 72, which is what you want for web. A web resolution is 72. So if you're snapping photos with a camera and you intend to upload them to a blog, you actually want to open up your images, and the first thing you do is you drop the resolution from 300, what your typical camera will take a photo at, down to 72. Okay, so we're going to have a look at how you can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my my cute cat picture here that I had worked with a little bit last time. So this guy was taken with a camera. In fact, it was probably one of my Canon cameras or something. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go over to the image menu and down to scale image. And you'll see here that the resolution of this image is 300 DPI. And you'll see here that the width is 1024 by 768. Okay, so the reason you want to adjust your resolution first is your resolution will push your pixels. And I'm thinking I had adjusted this before. I'm thinking that that this image was probably larger at one point in time. I can't imagine it was this. But regardless, what I would do if I wanted to use this on a website is I'd come down here, make sure that these guys are locked, and then I just highlight this guy and just change one of these two to 72. Okay, now if I scale this, now in Photoshop that may actually change the pixel dimensions. In GIMP you'll see that it did not. So if I come back down into scale image, we'll see that my height and width is the same, but my resolution has changed. Okay, so if you are uploading an image to a blog, you want the image to be here at your 72 dpi. Otherwise, this thing is going to be large. So what we're going to do is I'm going to, this is a JPEG image, should be. And so I'm going to save this image as a JPEG. Actually, on GIMP, I have to hit export as, not save as. I have to hit the export as. I hit the menu button right below it. Export as. And I'm going to save this as cat-small. Well, whatever the file name is, -small. And we're going to export. We're going to keep it at 90 there. And we are going to close the image. And I'm going to discard any changes so my original image does not get discarded. So you'll see here that I have these two images. And what we will see if I look at them, not that one. You'll see here that they look the same. So here they are side by side. You'll see they look essentially the same to our eye. You'll see that the one here on the right is the smaller one I just did. The one on the left is the normal one. So everything looks the same, but let's have a look at their image size. So this is the original, is 169.5 kilobyte, and this is the new one, 256 kilobyte. That's actually unusual to me. And that's probably because I saved them as a higher quality. I'm guessing I went with a higher quality. That last screen that I flipped through where I said 90, so that probably added a little bit of size. Now I had already taken, as I had mentioned, I had already taken this down and I'd scaled this down to something I would use for a blog. The one of these I would want, and again, this is a little baffling to me why this one here should be larger. But since I'm not dealing with something that came raw right out of the camera, this is probably not the best example. It's just what I had handy. But what you would see here is this guy here is smaller, this guy here is larger. You always want to go with the smaller image. So in this case with GIMP, I would actually take the larger one at 300 dpi, which is odd to me. But regardless, that is what you would want to do. If you are actually snapping photos with your camera, you will not see that instance. I said I had already optimized this thing, and I had optimized it for a web, not using the resolution, but another trick that we have in web design, and I had forgotten about that. Let me see if I have a picture here. Nah, I'm not going to worry about that. Regardless, that was how you can do your image size. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our image. Okay, so here is our image, and if we want to, first if we want to scale it, we already did the image scaling. So we all messed with the resolution the first time. The one that we want to mess with this time is to scale it, we want to change the pixel dimensions. So here on GIMP, I have not found a good way to do something you can do on Photoshop, which is where you can change the canvas size and the image resolutions at the same time. That's a two-step process to do it here. But what we want to do, so suppose I want to have this at 1024 by 350 for, no, not 1024. I want to do 1200 by 350, a good banner size. So the first thing that I would do is come over here, and I want to always maintain, anytime you're scaling an image, you probably always want to make sure that this guy here is linked the same. So what we're going to do is scale it up to 1200, and then you'll see it will automatically scale this guy down, and the kitty wants to come up and watch me crop the picture. And that little kitty on the screen there is this kitty, that little one right to the left of that scale image. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit scale, and then what you'll do is you'll see that makes it a little bit larger. So now to crop an image, there's a few ways you can crop an image. To crop an image with the exact pixel dimensions, the best way to do this is come into canvas size. And we said we wanted 1200 by 350. Okay, so you'll see that the canvas size is unlocked by default, and that's because it's common to crop your canvas sizes down without keeping the proportions the same. Okay, and then so once I have adjusted this, just click somewhere else and you'll get the crop. And then on GIMP here, we have this guy here. This is nice because this is something that Photoshop doesn't have, where I can choose where the crop is much easier. So you'll see that inside this little widget here is where our image is going to be. So I don't have a real good way of cropping this picture to have the cats. And this is one of those challenges in web design where people say, oh, I want this picture in my banner. Well, you need to make sure that you're utilizing images that can be cropped properly. So this image can't be, not very easily. We're gonna go ahead and hit the resize anyway. And you'll see that we get an image like this, okay? So that is what we have for this. Now I'm going to go ahead and undo these, and just with undo, just Control and Z. So I'm just gonna kind of back it up, because there's another way to crop. And that way is in your tool menu over here, you can come over and select your very top tool is your rectangle select menu. We have a rectangle, we have a circle, and we have a free space. We're going to talk about some of these other tools another time, but here just another way you can crop an image is just like this. And then you can actually grab these bars and scale it and move it how you like. If you go outside the scope of the picture, like we did there on the left, that's quite okay. It will just crop down, of course, to the size of the picture. So if we say, okay, this looks pretty good. Well, let me make sure I'm getting the maximum width there. Say this looks pretty good. Now what I can do is come back up to the image menu, now that we have a selection, and say crop to selection. Okay, so that's gonna crop it much like that. All right, so there's your scaling, there's your cropping. We looked at our canvas size already. So the next thing we're going to look at is looking at the color. So I'm going to deselect, and the default for deselect is Control Shift and press A, and that will deselect everything. Different if you're coming from Photoshop, where it's Control Shift D. A little bit different, but make sure that you keep that in mind. So one of the things I want to do is maybe I want to look at this and I want to change the colors around a little bit. So if you come up to your colors, you have some auto options up here, like your color balance. And what these guys here will do is allow you to adjust it. Now, if you have preview selected over here, then you'll be able to change this and view the changes. If we deselect that, you'll see it will go back to how it is. So this here, we can adjust our coloration a little bit. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. You also have your hue and your saturation. You have your colorize. Your colorize will essentially add a little bit of an overlay. So the first one we were looking at just changed how the colors interacted with each other. This actually adds an overlay. Okay. Hue and saturation. Of course, this is what is going to be the colorness, how bright is the image, and then how saturated. If you want to convert something kind of black and white, you can drop the saturation already down, or you can make it really bright and stand out. Okay. So those are kind of how you can do some levels. Now your levels here, if you're taking a lot of photography, your levels is a really good tool to learn how to use, because it will adjust, it will kind of do some fine overall image adjustment. You'll see the types of things you can do, so you can make certain features stand out. So like this image here looks a whole lot better than our original, which I'll show you by deselecting the preview. So see how this one's a little bit more bland? This tool here will make colors come alive and be a little bit more vivid. Of course, we can also change these directions here and these directions here. But I like keeping those about where they are. So this one here, we're going to go ahead and apply this, because that's actually a really nice application. All right. I'm just looking for my layers. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and, well, we'll worry about saving that later. All right, so there we have adjusted our colors. Now, one of the things that you will encounter is occasionally you may open up an image that is an indexed color. So the index, if you come up here to your image and you see this mode menu, you'll see that there's three basic types of modes. We have an RGB, we have a grayscale, and we have an indexed. Okay, so the RGB is going to be it's a broad-bitted system where you have every available accessible color to you. So utilizing your hexadecimal code, you can use any type of color within it. So I'm going to pull up just by clicking on the color panel over here on the left. If you see this guy here, we can adjust any of our HTML color reference over here. We can pick any color from the screen, and you can see here that you can go with any type of coloration you can possibly think of. So any type of color in here. Now, an indexed image is when you are, and you do this for making images much smaller, is you will give an image a certain index where it will only have a certain number of colors included in a palette. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over here and find the palette. You'll notice here that this is the palette tool or the color map, and it says only indexed images have a color map. So we're going to go ahead and open an indexed image. So this guy here is a banner image that used to be on my website before I had converted it to a different format. And I'm going to hold the control key and scroll with the mouse wheel to increase the size of this image. I can scroll this up or down to increase the size of the image. So if you look at this guy here, you'll see that now our color map contains a certain number of colors up here. And I have no idea how many this is. This might be 64 is my thought. Without counting them. But what we have here is these are the only available colors inside here. So if I come up this way and I want to pick a color, maybe red, which is hexadecimal code FF0000, and I say I got red, and then I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to grab a part, and with my paint bucket, whatever I click in here is going to be red. Okay. So this guy here is an indexed image, so whatever color I have available is going to drop in. Now, if you have an indexed image, however, and I do the same step, you'll notice we still have red colored, and I pick this guy here. Notice that it drops in this orange color, not the red we were expecting. So if you have the color you want here, and you are trying to colorize something, and you're getting a completely different color, that's because you have an indexed image. So it's picking the closest color it can possibly get within the image map that we have. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and undo all those. Now, suppose I still want red on here. Well, what I have to do with this image is I have to come up here to mode, and I change the mode to RGB. Now it says over here, only indexed images have a color map. I can't talk today. So now if I try and do the same thing, now you'll see that I get my red color. Okay. So make sure that you are working within the constraints of your image modes, RGB, index, and the other one we did not cover is grayscale, which will only give you color ranges within the black and white spectrum. And so if you do truly want black and white images, you don't go into the color map like we did and turn the saturation all the way down like I showed you. You actually go up into the mode and you change it into grayscale. That's going to translate better across a wider variety of platforms. So there is how you can do your scaling, cropping, canvas size, color maps, and some slight adjustments. I want to discard changes on that. I want to undo porting the red on the poor kitty. Kitty, you got red. You got red. Yeah, you did. And so the last thing I had on my list, and I apologize if I covered this in last week's tutorial, but we'll go ahead and have a look at it here again. And that is how you can export images as a different file type. So you have the save option, which only saves this as a GIMP file type. Which is, what is it, the XCF or something, I forget. But if you want to actually save this as any other type of image, hit the export as, And then now what you need to do is come down here to your menu and you can pick from any type of file that you want to export this as. So you'll see you have way more options than you probably even know exist. Again, if you're printing to something like, if you're sending something to a professional printer, you're going to want to come down and find TIFF and save this as a TIFF and make sure that your color scheme is exactly how you want it in CMYK, not RGB. That's a little limitation to GIMP, is that it doesn't make that distinction. If you work with Photoshop, you'll know that Photoshop will make a distinction between CMYK and RGB. If you do need that functionality and that's important to you, I believe that Krita on Linux will have that functionality. But if you want any other basic image, here's a Photoshop image at PSD. I find that sometimes these convert well, sometimes they don't. There's PDFs, PostScripts. The ones you will probably most likely use are your PNG and your JPEG. And you'll see the extensions here. It will tell you whether it would be appropriate extensions. There's a Windows bitmap as well. I'm not sure why anybody in their right mind uses those, but it's a possibility. So what you want to do is you'd want to select the image type that you want. Now, a limitation of GIMP is you actually have to come up here and manually change the extension. So it will, though, give you down here what the extensions can be. So the legal extensions are JPG, JPEG, or JPE are your three legal extensions for a JPEG. And you could do those capitalized or lowercase. That doesn't really matter. Now, of course, Linux is case sensitive, so that is a completely different file type. To change them differently, but it doesn't matter which one you choose to use. Usually, though, I'll tell you as a default, go with the lowercase if you can. All right, so that is a little bit more here on GIMP. Hopefully that has been helpful, and we're going to start getting into a little bit more serious items. Now from here I can kind of branch off into a lot of different directions and cover some different ways of using GIMP. So let me know in the comments the types of things you need to know how to do in GIMP, and I will be sure to focus on those in upcoming tutorials. So thanks for watching, and if you do like what we are doing over here on Switch to Linux, you can actually help support us by going to Patreon, patreon.com/TomM, or you can support us on Amazon. If you buy something on Amazon, head on down below in the description, click on the Amazon store link, and anything that you shop there within a few clicks will send a small portion of the proceeds to Switch to Linux. That helps us out with our servers, our costs, and the time it takes us to do these. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux and using GIMP.